Get your kids out of that illegal pool right now, or I'm calling the sheriff.
Brenda Kimball, the Architectural Review Committee Chair for our HOA, stood in my backyard with her hand resting on something at her hip. It took me a second to realize what I was seeing. A gun. She was carrying it openly, her fingers twitching near the grip. My 3 kids were in the water. Emma, my 8-year-old, was climbing out near the shallow end. The boys were splashing each other near the steps. "Brenda, you need to leave my property, now." She didn't move. "I have authority to inspect code violations. This pool was never approved, and I'm documenting." I said, "Leave." I stepped toward her, hands visible, trying to stay calm. My Navy training kicked in, assess the threat, control the situation, protect the asset. The asset was my children. She raised the gun halfway, her face flushed. "Don't you threaten me, Derek. I'll defend myself." I stopped cold. "I'm not threatening you. I'm asking you to leave before this gets worse." "Get out of the pool!" she screamed at my kids. Emma froze on the ladder, terrified. That's when it happened. Brenda's eyes darted to the water. Movement. She startled, jerked the gun up, and fired. The shot cracked through the afternoon air. Water exploded 6 feet from where Emma was climbing out. Then my brother Liam surfaced at the deep end, gasping for air, his face confused and disoriented. He'd been underwater for 90 seconds, part of his training routine. He's deaf. He hadn't heard any of it. Brenda's face drained of color. The gun dropped to her side. She stared at Liam, then at Emma, then at the pool. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She'd just fired into an occupied pool. She didn't know Liam was under. She could have killed him. She could have killed my daughter. If you want to see how I use my background as a naval rescue swimmer and pool safety inspector to take down an entire corrupt HOA board, hit that subscribe button. Because what Brenda didn't know was that I'm very, very good at finding what people try to hide underwater. I'm Derek Lansing. I spent 10 years in the Navy, pulling people out of situations they couldn't escape. I know how to stay calm when everything's on fire. And I know how to investigate systems, because in my civilian career, I inspect pools and aquatic facilities for code compliance. I see things most people miss, but none of that professional training prepared me for watching someone fire a weapon 6 feet from my child. Brenda backed toward the gate, stammering something about not knowing anyone was in the water, and then she was gone. I pulled my kids out immediately, wrapped them in towels, called 911, while Emma cried into my shoulder. The pool wasn't illegal. That was the sick part. 3 weeks earlier, I'd received a citation claiming the pool resurfacing, done 2 years ago by the previous owner, violated HOA guidelines. Brenda demanded $15,000 in compliance restoration fees, or I'd have to tear out and replace the entire surface. $35,000, money I didn't have. I'd moved my family to Crestview Pines 8 months ago for one reason. Liam, my younger brother, Paralympic swimmer. He's training for Olympic trials, and this pool has the specific surface and dimensions his coaches require. He'd relocated across the country to train with me. We sold our previous house, uprooted our entire life. Liam survived an IED blast that left him with permanent hearing loss and neurological damage. Swimming is the only thing that quiets the tremors, the only thing that makes him feel whole. That pool represents 2 years of sacrifice. It represents my promise to get him to the Olympics. And Brenda Kimball just shot into it while my children were swimming. The police arrived within 6 minutes. They took statements, reviewed my security footage, arrested Brenda for reckless endangerment and criminal trespass. But here's what I didn't know yet. The shooting was just the beginning. The police finished their investigation around 7 that evening. Brenda had been taken away in handcuffs 3 hours earlier, still stammering about self-defense and not knowing anyone was in the water. The detective, a tired-looking woman named Ramirez, told me the DA would likely file charges for aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, and criminal trespass. "Your security footage is clear," she said, handing me back my phone. "She entered your property without permission, brandished a weapon, and discharged it near minors, open and shut." I thanked her, walked her to her car, watched her drive away. Then I stood in my driveway and tried to process what had just happened. My neighbor Carol emerged from across the street. She's 72, retired elementary school teacher, always has cookies for the kids. But tonight her face looked drawn. "Derek, I'm so sorry. I heard the shot and... Are the children okay?" "They're shaken up, but physically fine." She hesitated, glancing back at her house. Can I tell you something about Brenda? We sat on my front porch. Carol pulled a folded letter from her cardigan pocket. 2 months ago, I received this, a citation for unapproved mailbox paint color, $3,000 fine. She handed it to me. My mailbox has been forest green for 11 years. Suddenly, it's a violation. I scanned the letter, same HOA letterhead, same threatening language about liens and legal action, same demand to use an approved vendor for corrections. Who's the approved vendor? Kimball Home Services. Brenda's brother-in-law runs it. When I called for a quote, he wanted $1,200 to repaint a mailbox. I could buy 5 new mailboxes for that price. Did you pay it? The $3,000? Yes, I'm on a fixed income. I couldn't risk a lien. Her voice cracked. I've lived here since this neighborhood was built. I planted those rose bushes when my husband was still alive. I couldn't lose my home over paint. Something cold settled in my chest. Carol, do you know anyone else who's gotten citations like this? She nodded slowly. The Hendersons, the Chens, that young couple on Oakmont Drive. Derek, there are a lot of us. Over the next 2 days, neighbors approached me quietly, always when no one else was watching, always with the same hesitant energy, like they were confessing something shameful. The Hendersons, a couple in their 40s with 2 teenage sons, showed me their citation. Unapproved deck staining, $8,000 in fees, or hire Kimball Home Services to redo the entire deck. $12,000 for a deck that was perfectly fine. We took out a loan, Mr. Henderson told me. We couldn't fight it. Brenda said if we didn't comply within 30 days, the fines would double weekly. The young couple on Oakmont Drive, Jessica and Marcus Chen, were worse off. They'd received a citation for structural modifications without approval because they'd replaced their garage door. $15,000 in fees. They'd been forced to use Kimball Home Services for a complete garage door system replacement. $22,000. We almost lost the house, Jessica said quietly. We have a 2-year-old. We just paid it. I started keeping a list. By the 3rd day, I had 11 names, 11 families, all owner-occupied homes, all cited for minor or non-existent violations, all forced to use Kimball Home Services. I pulled out my own citation again, read it more carefully this time. Pool resurfacing completed without prior architectural approval. Immediate compliance required. Approved vendor, Kimball Home Services. I called the previous owner, the man I'd bought the house from. He answered on the 2nd ring. Mr. Patterson, this is Derek Lansing. I bought your house on Mesquite Drive last year. Oh, sure, I remember. Everything okay? Did you get HOA approval for the pool resurfacing you did? Of course. Submitted the application, got approval 6 weeks later. I've got the letter somewhere if you need it. I need it. The HOA is claiming it was never approved. Silence on the line. Then, that's impossible. I have the signed approval letter from the architectural committee, dated and everything. Can you send it to me? Give me 10 minutes. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my list of names. 11 families. Probably more who were too scared to come forward. This wasn't about my pool. This wasn't even about me. This was a pattern. Eugene Moss showed up at my door 3 nights after the shooting. It was past 10, and I almost didn't answer. My kids were already asleep, and Liam had finally stopped jumping at every sudden noise. But I recognized Eugene through the peephole. HOA vice president, pharmacist, lived in the house directly across the street with a perfectly manicured lawn and the American flag that got taken down every evening at exactly 6. I opened the door. He looked terrible, pale, sweating despite the cool Arizona evening. His hands were shaking. Derek, can we talk just for a minute? I stepped aside and let him in. We stood in my entryway. I didn't invite him further. I wasn't sure I trusted him yet. I saw what happened, he said quietly. Saturday, from my bedroom window, I saw Brenda in your yard. I saw her pull the gun. I heard the shot. The police said you told them you didn't see anything clearly. He flinched. I know what I said. So you lied to the police? Yes. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Derek, you have to understand my situation. Your situation? My daughter was 6 feet from that bullet. I know. His voice cracked. I know, and I haven't slept since. But Brenda's husband is my doctor. I'm undergoing treatment for something serious. I can't switch physicians right now. My insurance, the pre-existing condition complications, the treatment protocol. He stopped, took a breath. And my son rents one of Brenda's properties. She gives him a rate that's $800 below market. He's got student loans, he's barely making it. If I go against her, I stared at him. So, you're protecting the person who shot at my family because she controls your health care and your son's housing. I'm not protecting her. I'm stuck. Then why are you here? Eugene looked around my entryway like he was checking for cameras. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. Because what she did was wrong. Because I have grandchildren. Because I keep thinking, what if it had been one of them in that pool? He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket, but didn't hand it to me yet. Brenda has arrangements with board members, with property owners. I've seen things in the meetings, in the emails. I've watched her approve modifications for certain properties while denying identical requests from others. What kind of arrangements? I can't give you details, not yet, but... He hesitated, then finally extended the paper. Check the property ownership records. See who actually owns the rental properties that keep getting fast-tracked approvals. See who's on the receiving end of all those contractor payments. I took the paper. It was a printout of HOA expenses, contractor payments over the past year. Kimball Home Services appeared 17 times. Total paid, $342,000. This is public record? I asked. Board members have access. I'm giving you mine. He turned toward the door, then stopped. Derek, I want to help. I do. But I have a wife who depends on my insurance. I have a son who will be homeless if Brenda decides to evict him. I can't be the one who stands up. Then who can? He looked at me for a long moment. Maybe someone who already has nothing left to lose. Someone she's already tried to destroy. You're asking me to do what you won't. I'm telling you that if someone did start asking questions, started pulling records, started connecting dots, there are people on this board who would be very interested in what they found. People who are tired of Brenda, but too afraid to move first. You mean you? I mean, I can't commit perjury at a trial. When they subpoena me, I'll have to tell the truth about what I saw. But until then, he met my eyes finally. I'm sorry. I'm a coward. But I'm a coward who's giving you a place to start. He left without another word. I stood in my entryway holding the expense report, listening to his footsteps fade down my driveway. Eugene Moss wasn't going to save me, but he'd just handed me a map to where the bodies were buried. I went to my home office and opened my laptop. If Brenda Kimball was running a scheme, she'd left a trail. And I knew how to follow trails. I'd spent 10 years in the Navy finding things people tried to hide underwater. Time to see what Brenda had tried to sink. The certified letter arrived on Tuesday morning. Heavy bond paper. Return address from Whitman and Associates, attorneys at law. I opened it standing in my driveway, still in my workout clothes from the gym. Dear Mr. Lansing, despite the pending criminal proceedings against Ms. Kimball, the Architectural Review Committee citation issued to your property remains in full effect and force. As of this date, you are accrued 14 days of non-compliance. Daily fines of $250 are now in effect, totaling $3,500 to date. You have 14 days from receipt of this notice to bring your property into compliance, or the Crestview Pines HOA will file a lien against your property. Compliance requires either payment of the outstanding $15,000 restoration fee or complete removal and replacement of the non-compliant pool surface by an approved vendor. I read it twice, then a third time. Brenda was in jail. She'd been arrested for shooting into my pool, and the HOA was still coming after me. I called the HOA management company immediately. Got transferred 3 times before reaching someone named Patricia in compliance. Ms. Patricia, I'm calling about a citation that was issued by someone who's currently facing criminal charges for... Sir, the management company doesn't have authority over architectural decisions. That's the purview of the board and the architectural committee. The person who issued the citation shot at my children. I understand your frustration, but the citation was issued prior to the incident in question. The board would need to vote to rescind it. Then I need to speak to the board. You can submit a request for a hearing. Those are typically scheduled within 45 to 60 days. I have 14 days before you file a lien. I'm sorry, sir. I don't make the policies. I hung up, called every board member whose number I could find, left voicemails, sent emails. No one responded. By Thursday, the daily fines had climbed to $5,000. By Friday, I found my pool equipment vandalized again. I'd gone out that morning to check the chemical levels before Liam's training session. The pump housing was cracked open. Someone had poured something into the chemical feeder. The water smelled wrong, sharp and acidic. The pH was dangerously high. I immediately shut down the system and called a pool service company. They arrived within 2 hours. Someone dumped muriatic acid directly into your feeder, the technician told me. You're lucky you caught it. Another few hours and this would have etched your pool surface permanently. 15,000 in damage. Can you fix it? I can balance the chemicals and replace your pump housing, but you're looking at 3 days minimum before this water is safe, maybe 4. 3 days. Liam's qualifying event was 17 days away. He was already behind on training from the stress and disruption. 3 more days would put him critically off schedule. I found him sitting on the edge of the pool that evening, staring at the cloudy water. He'd been doing that a lot lately, just sitting, not moving. The tremors in his hands were worse. I sat down next to him, pulled out my phone and typed, 3 days, we'll get you back in. He read it and nodded, but his expression didn't change. Then he typed back, maybe this is a sign, maybe I should withdraw. No, I'm causing problems for your family. The citation, the money, now this. Emma still has nightmares about the shooting. Maybe I should just... I grabbed his phone and typed quickly. You didn't cause this. Brenda Kimball caused this, and I'm going to fix it. He looked at me with that expression he gets when he doesn't believe me, but wants to. That night, my wife found me in our bedroom, staring at the HOA expense report Eugene had given me. How bad is it? She asked. We're at $5,000 in fines, accumulating $250 a day. If we don't comply in 10 days, they file a lien. Can we afford the compliance fee? Not without selling the house, and we still owe $70,000 on the old mortgage. She sat down on the bed. What are we going to do? I looked at the expense report again. $342,000 to Kimball Home Services. 17 payments over 12 months. I'm going to find out who's really running this HOA, I said. And I'm going to burn their scheme to the ground. Because this wasn't about my pool anymore. This was about my brother's dream, my children's safety, my family's home. And I'd learned a long time ago. You don't abandon people when the water gets rough. You dive deeper. I started the way I'd been trained, methodically, systematically, documenting everything. Saturday morning, I locked myself in my home office with my laptop, a legal pad, and the purchase documents from when we'd bought the house. My professional credentials as a pool safety inspector gave me access to municipal databases and building code archives that most homeowners wouldn't know existed. First, I pulled up my own property file, the pool. Resurfacing had been completed 23 months ago by the previous owner, Richard Patterson. I'd already spoken to him, and he'd emailed me a copy of his HOA approval letter. I printed it and laid it on my desk. Then I submitted a formal public records request to the HOA management company for all architectural decisions from the past 3 years. Arizona law requires HOAs to make these available within 10 business days. While I waited, I examined Patterson's approval letter more carefully. It was dated March 15th, 2 years ago, signed by the Architectural Committee. 3 signatures, Brenda Kimball, Eugene Moss, and someone named David Torrens. The letter explicitly approved pool resurfacing using competition-grade surface material, color, azure blue. My pool surface matched that description exactly. I logged into the HOA's homeowner portal. Every resident had access to current architectural guidelines and violation records. I searched for my property address. According to the system, there was no approval on file for pool resurfacing. The record simply didn't exist. I screenshotted everything. Then I started cross-referencing. I pulled up the county assessor's website and began searching property ownership records for every address in Crestview Pines. It took 4 hours, but I built a complete spreadsheet. Property address, owner name, owner type, individual or LLC, rental status, and HOA citation history. Patterns started emerging immediately. Owner-occupied homes, 92 properties. Of those, 28 had received architectural citations in the past 3 years. Rental properties, 38 properties. Of those, 34 had received architectural approvals for modifications in the same time period. I sat back and stared at the numbers. 28 denials or citations for homeowners, 34 approvals for rental properties. Then I dug deeper into the rental property ownership. 12 properties were owned by Desert Sage Investments, LLC. I ran that through the Arizona Corporation Commission database. Registered agent, Brenda Kimball. 4 more properties were owned by Kimball Family Trust. Brenda directly controlled 16 rental properties in Crestview Pines, nearly half the rental inventory. I opened a new spreadsheet tab and started tracking architectural approvals. Every rental property owned by Desert Sage Investments or Kimball Family Trust had received fast-tracked approvals. Average processing time, 18 days. Owner-occupied properties that got approved, average processing time, 94 days. My hands were shaking as I typed, not from fear, from rage. I pulled up the contractor payment records Eugene had given me. $342,000 to Kimball Home Services over 12 months. I cross-referenced those payments with the citation records. Every single payment corresponded to a citation issued to an owner-occupied property. Carol's mailbox, citation issued May 3rd, payment 2. Kimball Home Services on May 28th, $1,200. The Henderson's deck, citation issued July 12th, payment on August 4th. $12,000. The Chen's Garage, citation issued September 8th, payment on September 30th. $22,000. 17 citations, 17 payments. $342,000 extracted from homeowners and funneled directly to Brenda's brother-in-law's company. This wasn't selective enforcement. This was systematic extortion. I pulled up the Arizona Revised Statutes on HOA governance. Section 33, 1813. Board members have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the association. Self-dealing is prohibited. Conflicts of interest must be disclosed and recused. Brenda hadn't disclosed anything. She'd been approving work orders to her family's company while sitting on the architectural committee. Then, I found the deleted records. Using my inspector credentials, I accessed the HOA's digital archive system. The same access Eugene had mentioned, older files that had been moved to long-term storage but not permanently deleted. I found Patterson's approval letter, filed correctly, dated correctly, signed correctly, and I found 6 others. 6 property owners who'd received legitimate approvals that had been systematically removed from active records. All owner-occupied homes. All cited for violations within the past year. All forced to pay compliance fees or use Kimball Home Services. I printed everything, built a timeline, cross-referenced dates and payments and citations. By Sunday evening, I had 43 pages of documentation proving Brenda Kimball had been running a protection racket through our HOA for at least 3 years. The question was, what do I do with it? Liam's hands were shaking worse than I'd ever seen. It was Monday evening, 3 days since the pool had been shut down for repairs. The service company had finally cleared the water that afternoon. Chemicals balanced, pump replaced, system running clean. But we'd lost 72 hours of critical training time. I found him in the guest room where he'd been staying, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone. When I walked in, he looked up with an expression I recognized from his worst days after the injury. Defeat. He typed quickly and showed me his screen. Coach called, asked if I'm still planning to compete, said my times have been off in practice videos, wants to know if something's wrong. What did you tell him? That I'm fine. But I'm not fine, Derek. I can't focus. Every time I close my eyes, I see that gun. I hear the shot. I know I couldn't actually hear it, but I do. In my head. He stood up and walked to the window overlooking the backyard. The pool lights were on, water calm and clear. Maybe I should withdraw, take another year, try again for the next cycle. Liam, you guys have enough to deal with. The fines, the legal fees, Emma's nightmares. I'm just adding stress. I grabbed his shoulder and turned him to face me, pulled out my phone and typed, "This is not your fault. None of this is your fault. You are going to that qualifying event, and you are going to make that team, because you've worked too hard and sacrificed too much to let someone like Brenda Kimball take this from you." He read it. His jaw tightened. How? You can't even afford to keep the pool running. If they file a lien, I'm handling it. How? I showed him the spreadsheets I'd built. the property ownership records, the payment history, the deleted approvals, 43 pages of documented fraud. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the evidence. You found all this? This is what I do. I investigate systems. I find what's broken. And Brenda's system is very, very broken. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to take it to people who can actually do something about it. State oversight, licensing boards, the management company, every agency that has jurisdiction over HOA corruption and contractor fraud. He typed, Will that stop the fines? I don't know, but I'm not paying them either way. That night, my wife Sarah found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by printed documents and highlighted sections of Arizona HOA law. The kids are finally asleep, she said quietly. She poured herself tea and sat across from me. Emma asked again tonight if the bad lady is coming back. I told her Brenda's in jail. She wanted to know if jail is forever. Sarah's hands wrapped around her mug. I didn't know what to say. I reached across and took her hand. I know this has been... We're almost out of savings, Derek. The mortgage on the old house, the legal fees from the shooting case, now these fines. We've got maybe 6 weeks before we can't cover both mortgages. I know. And if they file a lien, the bank could call our loan. We could lose this house. Both houses. I know. She looked at the papers spread across the table. Is this really going to work, reporting her to state agencies? What if they don't do anything? What if the board just keeps the citation active and we lose everything anyway? I'd been asking myself the same questions for days. Sarah, I spent 10 years pulling people out of sinking aircraft and burning ships. I learned something doing that work. When you're underwater and you can't see the surface, you don't give up. You follow your training. You trust your equipment. You execute the plan. What's the plan? I showed her the complaints I'd drafted. 1 to the Arizona Department of Fire, Building and Life Safety. 1 to the State Contractor Licensing Board. 1 to the HOA Management Company demanding an emergency board meeting, each one backed by pages of documented evidence. I file these tomorrow, then I contact every homeowner who was victimized and get their testimony. Then I prepare for the board meeting and make this public. And if they retaliate, they already retaliated. They shot at our children. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, then let's burn it down. I kissed her forehead. That's exactly what I intend to do. Because this wasn't just about citations and fines anymore. This was about my brother's chance at the Olympics, slipping away while he suffered nightmares. This was about my daughter asking if the bad lady would come back. This was about every family Brenda had terrorized into silence. Tomorrow, the silence ended. Eugene appeared at my door again on Wednesday evening. This time, he looked worse, gray-faced, hollow-eyed, like he hadn't slept in days. I need to talk to you, he said without preamble. Can I come in? We went to the garage this time, more private. Sarah was helping the kids with homework, and I didn't want them overhearing whatever Eugene had come to say. He paced between my workbench and the storage shelves, his hands clasped behind his back. I've been subpoenaed, he said finally, for Brenda's criminal trial. I have to testify about what I saw. Good. You should tell the truth. I will. I have to. But Derek, there's something else. He stopped pacing and looked at me directly. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep sitting in board meetings and pretending I don't see what's happening. I can't sleep. My wife knows something's wrong. And every time I see your kids playing outside, I think about that gunshot and how I told the police I didn't see anything. Eugene, what are you saying? He pulled a thumb drive from his pocket. I'm saying I'm done being a coward. I'm saying I copied files from the HOA's internal system before I lost my nerve. Email records, text messages, financial documents that aren't in the public files. He held out the drive. I didn't take it yet. Why now? Because yesterday I got an email from Brenda's lawyer. He's trying to build a defense that you provoked her, that you were aggressive and threatening, that she feared for her safety. His voice shook. They want me to testify that I saw you advancing on her in a threatening manner. They want me to lie under oath to protect the woman who shot at children. What did you tell them? I told them to go to hell. He thrust the thumb drive toward me again. This has everything. Emails between Brenda and board members discussing how to target specific homeowners. Text messages where she coordinates with her brother-in-law about which citations to issue. Financial records showing payments from her consulting LLC. Payments from rental property investors who got fast-tracked approvals. I took the drive. This is admissible? I'm a board member. I have legitimate access to these files. Whether they're admissible in court, I don't know. But they're real, and they prove everything you've probably already figured out. Why the Consulting LLC? Investors who wanted rental properties here would pay Brenda $5,000 for architectural consulting. She'd expedite their approvals, waive objections, push modifications through in 2 weeks instead of 3 months. Meanwhile, owner-occupied homes got denied or cited for violations. How long has this been going on? 3 years, since she became committee chair. He rubbed his face. I knew it was wrong. I voted along with her because she had leverage, my son's housing, my doctor access, my position on the board. She made it clear that if I opposed her, all of that would disappear. So, I stayed quiet. What changed? I watched her fire a gun into a pool with children in it. His voice broke. I have grandchildren, Derek. What if it had been them? What if Emma had been 2 feet closer to where that bullet hit? I'd have stayed silent while a child died because I was afraid of losing my doctor. He sat down heavily on my workbench stool. I'm testifying. I'm telling the prosecutor everything. And I'm giving you this because what Brenda did to you, what she's been doing to this whole community, it needs to stop. I should have stopped it years ago. I plugged the thumb drive into my laptop, started scrolling through files. Email from Brenda to Eugene, dated 6 months ago. Eugene, I need your vote on the Chen garage denial. Remember our arrangement regarding your pool approval. Text message thread between Brenda and someone named Rick, her brother-in-law. Got another one. Henderson property, deck citation. Should be good for 10-12K work. I'll push the compliance deadline. Spreadsheet titled Consulting Income 2023-2024. 47 entries. Property addresses, investor names, payment amounts. Total $238,000. I looked up at Eugene. You understand what this means? Once I submit this to the state, there's no going back. They'll investigate the entire board. You'll be questioned. I know, I'm ready. He stood up. Derek, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't help sooner. I'm sorry I lied to the police. I'm sorry I let this go on as long as it did. You're helping now. That's what matters. He nodded and headed toward the garage door, paused with his hand on the handle. Burn it down, he said quietly. Burn the whole corrupt system down. After he left, I sat in the garage for a long time, scrolling through the files. Eugene had just handed me a nuclear weapon. Time to decide where to aim it. I spent the next 4 days building the most comprehensive case file I'd ever assembled. My home office became a war room. I printed every email Eugene had given me, cross-referenced every text message with the payment records, built timeline charts showing the correlation between citations issued and payments received, color-coded spreadsheets tracking property ownership, approval times, and contractor payments. The pattern was even worse than I'd initially thought. Brenda hadn't just been running a kickback scheme with her brother-in-law's company. She'd been operating a full-scale protection racket. Property investors paid her Consulting LLC between $3,000 and $7,000 for expedited approvals. Owner-occupied homeowners got cited for violations, real or fabricated, and forced to use Kimball Home Services for corrections. Brenda's brother-in-law would provide inflated quotes. Homeowners would pay out of fear of liens, and the money would flow. But here's what made it truly systematic. Brenda had been selectively deleting approval records. I found 8 properties total where legitimate approvals had been granted, then systematically removed from the active HOA database 18 to 24 months later. Then citations would be issued for the unapproved modifications. Homeowners would protest, produce their approval letters, but Brenda would claim the approvals were invalid due to technicalities or outdated forms. My pool was number 9. The average cost to each victimized homeowner, $14,000. I contacted a real estate attorney named Rebecca Ortiz, who specialized in HOA disputes. She reviewed my evidence over a 2-hour consultation. This is textbook breach of fiduciary duty, she said, flipping through the printed emails. Board members are required to act in the association's best interest, not their own financial interest. The self-dealing alone is actionable, but the systematic fraud, the deleted records, the fabricated violations, that crosses into criminal territory. What do I do with this? You file complaints with every agency that has jurisdiction, Arizona Department of Fire, Building and Life Safety oversees HOA compliance. The Registrar of Contractors handles contractor licensing violations. And you'll want to notify the HOA management company formally. Put them on notice that they're managing an association with a corrupt board. She pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. I'd also recommend contacting the county attorney's office. What you've documented here isn't just civil fraud, it's potentially criminal racketeering under Arizona law. RICO statutes apply to systematic schemes like this. RICO, that's organized crime legislation. Organized, systematic fraud with multiple victims and documented financial benefit? Yes, RICO applies. She looked up at me. Mr. Lansing, you've built a stronger case than most investigators manage with subpoena power. How did you compile all this? I'm a pool safety inspector. I investigate systems for a living. I find structural problems that aren't visible on the surface. Well, you found a big one here. Over the weekend, I drafted formal complaints to 4 different agencies. Each one included complete timeline of citations and payments spanning 3 years, property ownership analysis showing disparate treatment, email evidence of coordination between Brenda and her brother-in-law, text messages proving vote manipulation and board member coercion, financial records from the consulting LLC showing investor payments, documentation of deleted approval records, witness statements from 11 victimized homeowners. Rebecca reviewed each complaint before I submitted them. This is thorough, almost prosecutorial in quality. She signed off as my attorney of record on each filing. I'm also going to draft a demand letter to the HOA management company. We're requesting an emergency board meeting, suspension of all pending citations, pending investigation, and immediate disclosure of any other board member conflicts of interest. Will they comply? They'll have to. Once these complaints are filed with state agencies, the management company will be desperate to show they're cooperating. They don't want liability for managing a corrupt association. I submitted the complaints electronically on Monday morning. Department of Fire, Building and Life Safety, Registrar of Contractors, HOA Management Company, County Attorney's Office. By Monday afternoon, I'd received confirmation emails from 3 agencies acknowledging receipt and opening investigations. By Tuesday morning, the HOA Management Company called, requesting an emergency meeting with their legal counsel. By Tuesday evening, Rebecca called me back. The management company is scheduling an emergency board meeting for next Monday. They want this resolved before the state investigators show up. And Derek, they're requiring Brenda to appear despite the pending criminal charges. The board needs to vote on her status. She'll be there? Her attorney confirmed it. This is going to be very public, very messy, and very definitive. Are you ready for that? I thought about Emma's nightmares, about Liam's shaking hands, about Carol paying $3,000 because she was afraid of losing her home. I'm ready. Then let's finish this. I spent the next 3 days doing something I hadn't done since my Navy days, conducting a community canvass operation. The goal was simple: identify every homeowner who'd been victimized by Brenda's scheme and document their willingness to provide testimony. I started with the 11 families who'd already approached me: Carol with her mailbox, the Hendersons with their deck, the Chens with their garage. Each one had paid thousands in fraudulent compliance fees. I met with each family individually, explained what I'd discovered, and asked if they'd be willing to submit written affidavits for the state investigation and appear at the emergency board meeting. Every single one agreed. Then I expanded the search. Using my property ownership spreadsheet, I identified 23 additional owner-occupied homes that had received citations over the past 3 years. I printed a simple 1-page flyer explaining that I was investigating potential HOA misconduct and invited anyone who had experienced questionable citations to contact me confidentially. I hand-delivered the flyers on Wednesday and Thursday evening, walking the neighborhood systematically. Some people weren't home. Some took the flyer politely but non-committally. But 8 homeowners called me within 24 hours. By Friday, I had 19 confirmed victims willing to go on record. Saturday afternoon, I organized a meeting at the Hendersons' house. Their backyard was large enough to accommodate everyone, while maintaining some privacy from curious neighbors. 19 families showed up, 32 adults total. Some brought their citation letters, others brought paid invoices from Kimball Home Services. Several brought approval letters they had received years ago that the HOA now claimed were invalid. I set up my laptop and projector against the Hendersons' garage door and walked everyone through what I'd found. "This is the payment history to Kimball Home Services over 3 years," I said, displaying the spreadsheet. $342,000. Every payment corresponds to a citation issued to an owner-occupied property. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. "This is the property approval timeline." I switched slides. "Rental properties owned by Brenda's LLC, average approval time 18 days. Your properties, average 94 days for approvals, immediate citations for violations." "How is that legal?" someone asked. "It's not. It's selective enforcement and breach of fiduciary duty at minimum, potentially criminal fraud." I showed them the deleted approval records next. 8 properties where legitimate approvals had been systematically removed, then citations issued for the same modifications. "My pool is number 9, I said. "The previous owner got proper approval 2 years ago. Brenda deleted the record and cited me for an unapproved modification." Carol stood up, her voice shaking with anger. "So, she's been deliberately targeting us, creating violations so her family could profit?" "Yes, and I can prove it, but I need your help." I distributed affidavit templates Rebecca had prepared. Simple sworn statements, property address, citation received, amount paid, company used for corrections, any threats or coercion experienced. The emergency board meeting is Monday night. State investigators will likely attend as observers. If we show up, all of us, with documented evidence and testimony, we can force the board to act. "What if they don't?" Mr. Henderson asked. "What if they circle the wagons and protect her?" "Then the state investigation continues regardless, but I don't think they will. The management company is terrified of liability. Eugene Moss is ready to testify, and I've already filed complaints with 4 agencies. The board's options are remove Brenda and cooperate with investigations, or go down with her." Mrs. Chen raised her hand. "What about our money, the fees we already paid?" "Rebecca Ortiz, my attorney, believes we can pursue restitution once the fraud is established. Civil suits against Brenda personally, possibly against the HOA for failing to supervise. But first we need to stop the bleeding." Over the next 2 hours, every family filled out affidavits. We organized carpools for the board meeting, assigned speaking order so testimony wouldn't be repetitive, created a contact list for ongoing coordination. As people were leaving, Carol pulled me aside. "Derek, I've lived here 11 years. I always thought HOAs were just annoying, you know? Picky about paint colors and lawn height. I never imagined something like this. Most HOAs aren't corrupt, but when they are, they can destroy people. Thank you for doing this, for all of us." Her eyes were wet. "My husband died 3 years ago. This house is all I have. When Brenda threatened to put a lien on it, I thought I'd lose everything he left me." I squeezed her shoulder. "You're not going to lose your house. None of you are. We're going to make sure of that." Sunday evening, I prepared my presentation for the board meeting. 40 slides. Every citation, every payment, every email, every deleted record. Monday was going to be a reckoning. Monday morning, I received confirmation from Rebecca that 2 state investigators would attend the board meeting as observers. 1 from the Department of Fire, Building and Life Safety. 1 from the Registrar of Contractors. "They can't participate or ask questions," Rebecca explained over the phone, "but their presence will make it very clear to the board that this isn't going away quietly." "Will Brenda actually show up?" Her attorney confirmed it this morning. She's still a board member until formally removed, so she's technically required to attend. "But, Derek, expect her to be combative. She's facing criminal charges and now civil investigations. She has nothing to lose." I spent the afternoon doing a final review of my presentation. Every slide triple-checked, every citation cross-referenced with payment records, every email and text message verified for accuracy and context. At 4 o'clock, I drove to each of Brenda's 4 rental properties one last time. I took detailed photographs of every visible code violation I could identify. Unpermitted patio covers, fence modifications that exceeded height restrictions, a storage shed built without setback compliance, an AC unit installed in violation of noise ordinance placement rules. Every single violation matched the types of citations Brenda had issued to owner-occupied properties. I documented everything with timestamp and GPS coordinates embedded in the photo metadata, professional-grade documentation that would hold up under scrutiny. By 6 o'clock, I was home reviewing my notes one final time. Sarah found me in the office. "The kids are with my sister," she said. "I didn't want them here tonight in case things get ugly." "Good call. Liam wants to come to the meeting." I looked up. "He doesn't have to. This isn't his fight." "He says it is. He says Brenda shot at him too, and he wants to see this through." She sat down across from me. "I think he needs to be there, Derek, for closure." I nodded slowly. "Okay, but he stays in the back. If things get heated, I want him able to leave." At 7:15, we arrived at the community clubhouse. The parking lot was already packed. I'd expected the 19 families I'd organized, but there were at least 40 cars. Inside, the meeting room was standing room only. Every chair filled. People lined up against the walls. I recognized some faces, neighbors I'd canvassed, but many were unfamiliar. Word had spread. The 5 board members sat at a table in front. Eugene was there, looking pale but determined. 3 other members I recognized from HOA correspondence. And Brenda. She sat at the far end of the table, her attorney beside her. She looked thin, exhausted, but when her eyes found mine across the room, they were full of cold fury. Rebecca appeared at my elbow. State investigators are in the back corner, gray suit and blue blazer. They're recording everything. The HOA management company representative, a nervous-looking man named Charles Whitmore, called the meeting to order at 7:30. This emergency session has been called to address serious allegations regarding architectural committee conduct and potential conflicts of interest. Mr. Derek Lansing has requested time to present evidence to the board. Mr. Lansing, you have 30 minutes. I walked to the front of the room, connected my laptop to the projector. The first slide appeared on the screen behind me. Systematic fraud and selective enforcement, a 3-year analysis of Crestview Pines, HOA architectural decisions. I heard Brenda's sharp intake of breath. "My name is Derek Lansing. I live at 847 Mesquite Drive. 8 weeks ago, I received a citation claiming my pool resurfacing was never approved by this HOA. That citation was false. The approval existed but had been deliberately deleted from HOA records. Tonight, I'm going to show you that my case isn't isolated. It's part of a systematic scheme to extract money from homeowners through fraudulent citations and selective enforcement." I advanced to the next slide, the payment history to Kimball Home Services. $342,000 over 3 years. "This is where we start." Brenda's attorney leaned over and whispered something to her. She shook her head sharply. I clicked to the next slide. Property ownership analysis, rental versus owner-occupied approval rates. The room was completely silent except for the hum of the projector. Over the past 3 years, rental properties in this community received architectural approvals at a rate 5 times faster than owner-occupied homes. Rental properties owned by Desert Sage Investments, LLC, an entity controlled by Brenda Kimball, received approvals in an average of 14 days. I looked directly at Brenda. Owner-occupied homes received citations at 3 times the rate of rental properties, and every citation resulted in payment to Kimball Home Services, a company owned by Ms. Kimball's brother-in-law. The murmuring in the crowd grew louder. I advanced to the next slide. Let me show you exactly how this scheme worked. I walked the board and the entire room through the evidence methodically, slide by slide. First, the deleted approval records. I displayed my pool approval letter from the previous owner, dated, signed, legitimate. Then I showed the HOA database screenshot with no approval on file. This record was deliberately removed. I've identified 8 other properties where the same pattern occurred. Legitimate approvals granted, then deleted 18 to 24 months later. Then citations issued for the same modifications that were previously approved. I showed each case. The Henderson's deck, the Chen's garage, 5 others, each with documentation showing original approval and subsequent deletion. Why delete records? Because homeowners without documentation can't fight the citations. They either pay compliance fees or hire the approved contractor, Kimball Home Services, to make corrections. Next, I displayed the email evidence Eugene had provided. This is an email from Brenda Kimball to Eugene Moss, dated November 12th of last year. "Eugene, I need your vote on the Chin Garage denial. Remember our arrangement regarding your pool approval? Eugene stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. This is vote buying. Board decisions made not on merit, but through coercion and leverage. Brenda's attorney stood. Mr. Whitmore, I object to this character assassination. These emails are taken out of context and— Sit down, one of the state investigators said from the back. Gray suit. His voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. Mr. Lansing has the floor. You'll have opportunity to respond. The attorney sat. I continued to the text messages between Brenda and her brother-in-law, Rick. Got another one. Henderson property, deck citation. Should be good for 10-12K work. I'll push the compliance deadline. This message was sent 3 days before the Hendersons received their citation. Mr. Henderson stood up in the audience. We paid $11,800 for work our contractor said was completely unnecessary. Our deck was structurally sound. I nodded and advanced to the financial records. Brenda Kimball operates a consulting LLC called Desert Sage Advisory Services. Over the past 3 years, this LLC has received payments totaling $238,000 from property investors seeking architectural approvals in Crestview Pines. I displayed the spreadsheet. 47 transactions. Property addresses matched to payment dates matched to approval dates. Investors paid between $3,000 and $7,000 for consulting services. In exchange, their modifications were approved in an average of 16 days. Meanwhile, owner-occupied homeowners waited 94 days for approvals, if they got approved at all. The crowd's murmuring had grown to full conversation. Whitmore banged a gavel. Order, please. I moved to the comparison slide. Photos of Brenda's rental properties next to photos of cited owner-occupied properties. This is a patio cover at 1247 Sage Ridge Court, one of Brenda's rental properties, unpermitted, exceeds height restrictions by 14 inches, blocks sight lines. No citation issued. Click. This is a patio cover at the Henderson property, permitted, built to code, cited for aesthetic non-compliance. $8,000 fine. I went through 6 more examples. Each one showed Brenda's properties violating the same standards she'd enforced on others. This is selective enforcement. This is self-dealing. This is breach of fiduciary duty. And this is fraud. I turned to face the board directly. 19 families in this room have submitted sworn affidavits documenting citations, payments, and coercion. Collectively, you've extracted $83,000 in fraudulent compliance fees. The state is investigating. The county attorney has opened a case file, and every one of these families deserves restitution. Brenda finally spoke, her voice shaking with rage. You have no idea what you're talking about. I've dedicated 3 years to maintaining property values in this community. Every decision I made was to protect our investments. You mean your investments? I cut her off. You own 16 rental properties here. You profit when owner-occupied homes are forced out and converted to rentals. You've been systematically targeting families to drive down owner occupancy rates. That's a lie. Then explain the emails. Explain the deleted records. Explain why your properties have violations that never get cited, while homeowners get threatened with liens for mailbox colors. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly. You came into this community and immediately started causing problems. Your pool was never properly approved, and I have the approval letter, signed by you. That approval was issued under outdated guidelines. The guidelines haven't changed in 5 years. You deleted the record and fabricated a violation. Her face flushed red. You have no right to— I have every right. You shot into my pool while my children were swimming. You threatened my family's home. You've terrorized this entire community. Eugene stood up from the board table. I move that we immediately suspend Brenda Kimball from all board positions pending the outcome of state investigations. Second, another board member said quickly. Brenda's attorney grabbed her arm. Brenda, sit down. Don't say anything else. But she was beyond listening. This is a witch hunt. You're all turning on me because one troublemaker with a victim complex. Vote, Whitmore said firmly. All in favor of suspension? 4 hands went up. Only Brenda's stayed down. Motion carries. Ms. Kimball, you are suspended effective immediately. The room erupted. The emergency board meeting continued for another hour after Brenda's suspension, but the outcome was never in doubt. The board voted. unanimously to dismiss all pending citations, pending independent review. They voted to authorize the HOA's attorney to negotiate restitution settlements with the 19 affected families. They voted to implement new conflict of interest policies prohibiting board members from owning more than one property in the community. And they voted to invite the state investigators to conduct a full audit of architectural decisions dating back 5 years. Brenda left the meeting with her attorney, refusing to speak to anyone. But as she passed me near the door, she stopped. "You've destroyed my reputation, my business, everything I built. You destroyed it yourself when you shot at my children." She stared at me for a long moment, then walked out. I didn't feel triumphant, just exhausted. The state investigation took 6 weeks. During that time, the county attorney's office pursued criminal charges against Brenda beyond the original shooting incident: fraud, racketeering, theft by extortion. Her brother-in-law faced contractor licensing violations and was banned from performing HOA work statewide. Eugene testified in both the criminal trial and the civil proceedings. His testimony about the vote buying and coercion was devastating. The jury deliberated for 3 hours before convicting Brenda on multiple counts. She received probation for the reckless endangerment charge related to the shooting, no jail time, because there were no physical injuries. But the fraud convictions carried heavier consequences: 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation after release, permanent ban from serving on any HOA board in Arizona, and restitution orders totaling $97,000 to be paid to victimized homeowners. Her brother-in-law's company folded within a month. The HOA settled with the 19 families. I received a check for $22,000 covering the fraudulent citation, accumulated fines, legal fees, and compensation for the pool equipment vandalism. Every other family received proportional restitution based on what they'd paid. Carol cried when she received her check, $3,000 back, plus another $2,000 in damages. "I can finally fix my roof," she told me. "I've been putting it off because I couldn't afford it after paying that mailbox fine." New board elections happened in March. 5 reform-minded homeowners ran on a platform of transparency and accountability. All 5 won. Eugene chose not to run again. He'd had enough of HOA politics, but he remained a friend. The community changed after that. People were more engaged, more willing to question decisions. The new board implemented open meeting policies, published detailed financial reports quarterly, and established an independent architectural review process. Property values actually increased once word spread that the corrupt regime had been removed, and Liam qualified for the Olympic team. He missed it by a fraction of a second in the first qualifying event. The disrupted training had cost him, but he came back 2 months later at the secondary trials and posted a time that placed him 4th in the national rankings. I watched him touch the wall, surface, and look at the scoreboard. When he saw his time, his face broke into the widest smile I'd seen since before his injury. He's in Paris now, training with the team, living the dream we'd sacrificed so much to make possible. As for me, I became something I never intended to be, an HOA reform advocate. I've spoken at 3 state legislative hearings about HOA oversight and homeowner protections. I've consulted with 2 other communities dealing with board corruption. I've helped draft model conflict of interest policies that are being considered for statewide adoption. Because here's what I learned. HOA boards have enormous power over people's homes and lives. Most board members are well-intentioned volunteers. But when corruption takes root, when someone like Brenda weaponizes that power for personal profit, it can destroy families. My Navy training taught me to stay calm under pressure, to investigate systems methodically, to never abandon someone who's drowning. Those skills saved my family, and they exposed a scheme that had been operating in plain sight for years. If you're dealing with an HOA that's overstepping, targeting you unfairly, or operating in ways that feel wrong, document everything. Build your evidence systematically, find your allies, and don't be afraid to escalate to state authorities when local systems fail. Because sometimes the person with the clipboard is the one breaking the rules. And sometimes the quiet neighbor who just wants to keep his family safe turns out to be the person who brings the whole corrupt system down. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. I share stories about people who stood up to injustice. fought back against abuse of power, and won against impossible odds. Because these stories matter, and because you never know when you might need the courage to stand up yourself.